Good late Tuesday, early Wednesday. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center right now, giving a look at the Doppler across the region and that infrared satellite as well. You do see here temperatures. Well, they're sitting kind of nice out there, maybe a little bit warmer than what we're going to see as we look ahead into the timeline. I know, especially Thursday, Friday morning, gonna be cool out there. Something that you guys may enjoy. Maybe that jacket weather more so though, as we're gonna see some 40s, especially. I know Thursday morning I have 49 in my forecast here overall, so some stuff to get even cooler than that as we're waking up across the region. But we're going to watch some fog potential here as we're looking here in toward our region as well. I got to watch out for some dense fog, possibly already seeing some of that there toward Live Oak and toward Perry there. Half a mile visibility in Perry at this 2 a.m. hour if you're watching live, 2:30 or so, and then it is a fourth of a mile visibility there in toward parts of Live Oak. South of our area there in toward parts of Hernando County, half a mile visibility there around Brooksville. So that's something we're watching for there. I know Gainesville's still at 10 miles. I know Cecil Field and Jacksonville's down to 2 miles. It's not going to show up as an icon on here, but that's something to kind of keep in mind as we're tracking things here. Just kind of intriguing to keep an eye on the overall weather scenario, obviously, as we're giving you guys the latest update here. I know there's a lot going on in some regards, and I know that, especially has to deal with a tropical storm Melissa there, as we're looking down toward areas in the Caribbean. We got to be very mindful of this here. I'm going to be paying attention because there are some model indications here that this could be a big deal. Maybe not toward the continental U.S. or even the U.S. in general here. I'm talking about Puerto Rico when I say it like that because it is closer to them, as you're looking here with some of these models, even in the 5 days or so versus the continental U.S. here with that potential, with the cone of concern and the like. But we're just going to continue to watch it here, continue to give you guys the very latest because there is a lot of uncertainty here as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things here. I know I just don't want people caught off guard. It's not something that we're expecting to come toward North Florida at this point, but I don't want you guys to just completely write this off here. I don't want to completely write this off here at this point because there is that uncertainty that does remain here as we're looking at things. I know you can kind of see some of the guidance of TVCN is taking this toward Jamaica as a very powerful and very slow-moving hurricane, which is very concerning. A lot of meandering going on out here, which can really, add to those rainfall totals and make this a historic storm that ultimately gets retired here. That's a possibility. That's what this one, model consensus is showing. The TVCN showing this coming toward Kingston, Jamaica as a Category 3 here hurricane late Sunday. So that could be very problematic. A very slow-moving hurricane like that could cause this catastrophic flash floods, just, a devastating scenario for areas that, in some cases are really flood prone. So we really got to be careful down there. And toward Cuba could have issues, could also have the issues further east here toward the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and even maybe Puerto Rico. We'll see on that a little bit further out versus where the consensus kind of is at right now. But you see the Hurricane Center forecast, these white dots are so slumming. It's down here, and I got to take some stuff off because there's just so much on here, and it's going to organize more so the thunderstorms wrap around the center more so than we have it now. I mean, the position in here late this evening was where that red square is, and according to the Hurricane Center, it's only going to get to about up here, which I'll put the marker on, and then zoom back out in 5 days. That's how little, that's really not that far. It's only about 200 miles, 250 miles within 5 days movement. That's extraordinarily slow. It can allow this to become a very powerful storm. And let's say it goes further out here, then all of a sudden the pattern could allow it to, at least, again, not saying that it will. The odds of it right now doing this are pretty low, but in theory it could kind of boomerang back towards South Florida in a one-off scenario here that we're not really expecting right now as we're tracking the overall situation. That's not what we're anticipating, but if it were to, instead of be over here where I'll put the word red square, instead it's somewhere like over here maybe, as we're tracking things, that's, further toward like southwest Cuba or something, then all of a sudden, when it kind of pulls back northeast, we could have a problem for South Florida. We had Wilma in '05. Not saying that's going to happen by any stretch, but that's the very low scenario here. That is a scenario I would say is on the table still. I wouldn't think that's going to happen right now. I think that's pretty unlikely, but it's not a zero chance here. Not even a zero chance for North Florida to have impacts here, direct, other than, maybe more than just rip currents, but that's lower. That wouldn't necessarily make as much sense here with climatology here. But South Florida, it does make sense with that climatology. Wilma being an example 20 years ago, that anniversary right around there. So we have to be careful with that, just in case Milton, we haven't been, haven't got past that anniversary back too far. It came from a different angle, but you kind of get the idea here. And we'll have to watch the Mid-Atlantic Northeast in case if it goes further east and all of a sudden it curve back west, but that's way out there. Sandy in 2012 was a storm system where we had that angling back toward the north and west, and it caught, some of the models by surprise. The European, I believe it was the one that nailed it. The others, not so much. And the European and I know it's coming out now, the latest run of that, but it was one that was a further western outlier here with things compared to the other models. So, and in this situation, as we were looking inside, not so a direct hit by any stretch as the last one that I looked at. Again, the latest information just coming in, but this is not something you want to write off despite how quiet hurricane season has been, whether it's a big impact outside the U.S. and or in the U.S. I would say more likely just outside, of the U.S. and not in the U.S. here, but I don't want you guys to let your guard down, because there are some scenarios here that, are more concerning, that are not, they're non-zero here at this point. So we're not turning logo red or anything like that. We'll have more late Thursday unless we need to pop back on earlier here with things, which I'm not expecting to have to do. That would be very unlikely, at this point, because we're not going to even have very much more probably, until at least the late Thursday update. Maybe by then even we don't have much certainty at all on this at that point. So we'll have to just continue to watch. I know I'm going to check some of the European model guidance here, because it's on some sources it's coming in here some more. I just want to see what it's showing, because I have a feeling, that model might handle something like this a little bit better. It does seem to be, taking it into the Bahamas here is a pretty powerful storm, powerful hurricane, as we're looking, maybe eastern Bahamas here. So, it's definitely, for a track like that, further west than what this is showing the model that we have on the screen. I can't say the European at this point, but looking here, and yeah, we something we need to watch here for the eastern U.S., South Florida, and the eastern coast, more up the coast, not necessarily Jacksonville at this point, but South Florida, and then maybe further up the coast, because of the way things could shape up here as we're looking. Maybe even, that could be toward Halloween even, as we're looking further up. So I don't want you guys to let your guard down. There's a lot of cold cloud tops here. Again, there's a lot of uncertainty. If I had to make a forecast right now, which would be very tough, I would say it misses the continental U.S. by a pretty wide margin, but that is not, something that is set in stone. This is a very low confidence situation. There's a lot of uncertainty here, and I think it's still on the table that the U.S., continental U.S., could have direct impacts here from this. I know I don't want to say that too much this year. This storm has some characteristics that are concerning, even if it isn't a U.S. strike. A lot of the models are, really turning this into something that is a very powerful major hurricane. Talking about a Category 3 or stronger here on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale, and that could be, devastating down there, to catastrophic even in the world areas, maybe Jamaica, somewhere down in there, Dominican Republic, Haiti, maybe not all those areas, but some of those areas could get feet of rainfall, which they cannot handle. Not a lot of spots in the U.S. can handle that here, especially if it's a more, shorter period, because of the high rainfall rate per hour. I mean, look what Harvey did in Texas and Houston in 2017, for instance. So you just got to be very mindful here. There's a lot of concern for the Caribbean, a lot of uncertainty, more uncertainty than anything here at this point in some ways. But, there's just always just have the hurricane kit up to date. There's really not much more I can say than that on this, because there's just, there's such a widespread in the model guidance here at this point, and I think there's a room for this to change quite a bit as center really gets more firmly organized with the clouds around that, as we get like an eye of a hurricane or something, and then, it could kind of form further west, and that could, jump the models further west a little bit. So we'll see. We'll watch it. We're going to watch Melissa here, Tropical Storm Melissa, as we continue to give you guys the very latest. This is 2 a.m. Kona concern per se. I know when I say it like that, of course, it's technically, it's just that graphic. It's the 11 p.m. forecast, but I pulled it from the latest, so you see the marking here, the position at least on this graphic. But 50-mile-an-hour max sustained winds. I know, getting all that latest data here, that's what's helpful about being on later in the night like this. As we, if you are up, I know some folks aren't, but we get a lot of the big model guidance here, updating around this time, and that's really helpful here as we're looking at things. And we're always giving you the latest Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch there. And you can just see here that this is from the National Hurricane Center's website. And you see that Kona concern. I mean, you don't have Puerto Rico in it right now. And they're looking, maybe as if they'll be, in a better spot at this point. But let me just check a couple things here on this, because I know we those areas there in Puerto Rico, they get hit by Maria. It's a hard part of the United States there, not the lower 48, of course, but still part of the United States there. I'm going to go ahead and look here at the overall scenario. I'm going to go ahead and I want to just check the rainfall forecast down there. They're going to have some rain, and maybe, eventually the moisture gets poured in, where it's a pretty wet pattern, maybe, where some areas could get 6-7 inches overall eventually here in the pattern, but maybe not, just the full, impact. And the GFS really giving areas further off toward the west quite a bit more rain. I'm going to check the European, though. It's going to be 12Z for this, because it's easier to get all the websites I generally go to for this up on here. And it's so in eastern Cuba getting, upward about 20 inches of rain. Parts of the Dominican Republic and Haiti getting, into the feet of rain as well, which would be very problematic here. So, and in Jamaica, Jamaica, that area down there, getting feet of rain, 2 feet, maybe in some cases. I see at least 18 inches on the European there when I plot it. As I'm looking at things here on some of this, and some of this I went a little further out in the timeline just because of the overall moisture pattern, and that's a little more uncertain. But we got to be careful. You see that yellow is a tropical storm watch for Jamaica, hurricane watch for parts of Haiti there, and you see, the Dominican Republic. We're watching that area as well. In fact, the details on that here from the National Hurricane Center in Miami, but they wrote up in that 2 a.m. update. I don't know, these are the updated alerts here on this graphic. At least they should be, unless something's changed here in the last few minutes. And the Air Force Hurricane Hunter aircraft, and currently is investigating Melissa. We have a hurricane watch in effect for the southwestern peninsula of Haiti from the border with the Dominican Republic, the Port-au-Prince, and then a tropical storm watch in effect for Jamaica there. The timeline's weird with this because, those are generally more like 48 hours out. That's if this speeds up here. Then it's a situation where things can end up being a little bit trickier. I know sometimes different areas, I said the U.S. might have different criteria too here for some of this, because in theory you see this and you would think maybe Jamaica would be under the hurricane watch, but it's about the timeline, the wind fields. Kind of tricky here, because really you wouldn't generally have watches this far out, but there's a chance if it's sped up quicker, then all of a sudden you get into the wind fields, a certain level of winds quicker here, because we're, over 48 hours away from, maybe according to this right now, if you just go off the center, today is Wednesday morning, Saturday night, that is over 72, almost, approaching 96 hours away there, give or take, from Jamaica with a landfall. So you wouldn't generally have a watch, but it's about the wind field and the uncertainty here. There's a lot of uncertainty. You see South Florida just barely under that 50 miles per hour in the Keys there right now. Extrapolate out, well, maybe you get concerned, but the angle on this, if it was, down in here, it'd probably merge verge, I should say, more off toward the east and north, from this, and that would be safely east of the U.S. here in the southeast part, and then it would be more Bahamas this year, north current risk for Florida and the like. It would have to be further west. It'd have to be probably west of the whole Kona concern here to really, take that turn back off toward Florida based on the overall steering pattern. But, if it just stays down here forever, it could kind of get pulled up here in North Florida. And, if it went further west too, as we're looking at, as we're tracking things. So we're watching Florida's chances of direct impacts, not very high right now. But South Florida, the Keys, just pay attention here just in case. Check in daily down there for updates at this point based on where it is in the timeline. But as you go ahead and look at our names here, Melissa, on that name list here right now, that M name, over the years, some of those have been very notorious, obviously, in the Atlantic Basin. You think about storms like Michael, you think about Mitch there, you think about just some of those other names here through the years. I know the I names, of course, even maybe more notorious with Irma and Adalia and Ike and Ian and the like. But those M names, some of those have been very bad here as well as you're looking toward the basin. Of course, Milton last year, you can't forget about it. As we're looking here, as we're tracking things, in terms of the tropics here, just so important to be mindful here of what we're dealing with as we go ahead, but not expecting it to get into the Gulf here, that Gulf of America / Gulf of Mexico. They're not expecting this to get into that at this point. I mean, and if somehow it got close to that, then you're gonna have a problem for South Florida probably. But we just have to be paying attention. I mean, in theory, it could just kind of, be something where it just goes just these two and you get some impacts in South Florida still. That's the pretty low probability of happening, but I wouldn't completely rule it out because there's so much uncertainty here. In a couple of days, we might be, pretty, safe in talking that there's not going to be the direct Florida impacts. There's a decent chance that the models will become, and come into better agreement here as we're looking and tracking things. As we look ahead toward the timeline, and we'll realize it'll be more disrupt currents or something for Florida, but just pay attention. Okay, that's about enough on that. As you see, the climatology says we still have potential in late October. You think about storms like Wilma in 05, and then in November you think about storms like Kate and Nicole and Ada there as well. That was another one. That was impacted South Florida. They had a lot of flooding rains down there from Eta in 2020 using that Greek alphabet then. As we go ahead and look at the drought monitor, you can see some extreme drought here as we're looking and tracking things out toward Tallahassee, out toward some of these areas out there. We did get some pretty good rains in spots as we were looking, though, on that Sunday. A little bit more rain than we were expecting here towards Stark, especially as we were, giving you guys the latest. We had a 50% rain chance, and we didn't get severe weather to come into force, though, except we had that one warning. It wasn't enough to come on for, but we had that one warning there out toward Dixie County and that vicinity. And there's just a little bit of wind damage there. One report, it was, a couple hundred folks without power, something like that. That was about it. Not a big deal at all. We needed the rain. So that was a net positive, I would say, for our area. We'll get another update on this Thursday. May look a little bit better. Still, the ditches, I know around here we got 3/4 of an inch around Stark. And they are pretty dry. I mean, not always the case. I mean, it's good that it rain, quickly, but that tells you we really still need a rain. And, so this may not look that much better on Thursday. That moderate drought here around Stark. I know there's some concern with the, pretty dry conditions here. Not ideal fire weather conditions in general. As we're looking ahead, even though we did get that rain, it still really wasn't enough. It's better than nothing. I mean, we did better than we could have here in Stark. That's for sure. I mean, 3/4 of an inch is pretty good. I mean, we're not getting any severe weather, not except for that one report out there toward Dixie, but not getting any severe weather here in Bradford County or anything like that. So we will take that rain for sure because we're not expecting quite that much. That was a positive thing. That was, something to celebrate in some ways here, as long as, you didn't have a lightning strike or something. Which we didn't have too much of that here on Stark with that on Sunday, but you kind of get the idea as we're looking at things. That next 7 days of the rainfall is pretty scarce here as we're looking toward like Stark. You see 1/10 of an inch. I mean, this wouldn't really show anything for 7 days on Thursday and Friday from the Weather Prediction Center. We ended up getting quite a bit. I thought we'd have a little, here. We had a good bit, though, quite honestly. And you see the Funny River Valley, maybe more South Georgia, maybe a half inch. We need anything we can get without severe weather. We'll take it long as it's not, just flooding rains, and we're not expecting that unless we do get a tropical system somehow. You kind of see the footprint of what the current forecasting is here, maybe of some of that moisture down in the far southeast, bottom right corner of the screen there. You see some of that heavier rainfall down there, away from Florida. I feel like that could be way closer and in the Bahamas, based on the European was showing. So we'll watch. There's a lot of uncertainty there. Again, with Melissa, Tropical Storm Melissa out there. But you see toward Texas, around the Houston area, and toward Louisiana, Lake Charles there, up toward Alexandria. You can see there about 2-3 inches of that precip. Expect the next 7 days up toward Tulsa there. Some of those areas 3-4 inches of rain. Fort Smith, Arkansas there. Getting around Fayetteville. A good bit of rain anticipated there as well. Got to watch out for at least a little bit of flash flooding in some of these backyards. You have the interactive radar when we're not on clutterther.com/radar. And then just remember the mantra, turn around, don't drown, of course. That's, always important in these areas when we do have too much rain. Again, not expecting too much rain around here. There are some rain chances to talk about locally, though, which we'll get to in a moment. But South Georgia, you see that drought concern, still an extreme drought. So we really need the rain, even if maybe some of this got, helped a little on Sunday. Not going to just take it all away here, obviously, as we're looking and as we're tracking things. You see there, Seminole County, Decatur County there, Overlord areas there in Grady County, Thomas County. You get the idea, a lot of that concern. And further up even. But you see here on graphic now, fog safety. That's something we have to watch out for. That, dense fog is a concern. We see that dense fog, already on some of our areas. So just make sure you slow down and give yourself extra time to reach your destination. Make sure your vehicle is as visible as possible to other vehicles by using your low beam headlights, and leave plenty of room between you and the vehicle in front of you. I know not that we're expecting it necessarily to go like this, tonight or anything. I wouldn't think so, but it's just important. Also, if you ever have fog and smoke to interact, that can be a real problem. I mean, you think about, and I was just looking through some old newspapers here, and it reminds you of some of the different events here that, at least in some ways, were caused, it would seem, by the weather. And that was that terrible, accident there, sequence in Payne's Prairie, going back about 15 years or so ago. We had fog and smoke, and it was a disaster down there. And we had many fatalities on the I-75 area there because of how that interacted. Just absolutely a tragedy, as we're looking and as we're tracking things. So just always good to be vigilant in those instances here when you're driving. Just always got to be very careful here. And really being, on your guard when you have these type of instances. So, that was January 2012 to be precise there, as I double check my dates on that. But just, awful stuff there, as, not expecting to just set up like that. But that's something that's not really easily forecasted, honestly. If you have smoke and fog, just fog, meteorological thing, but the smoke is a fire, and, and it causes by that, and that's not good. But as we go ahead and look here, college football playoff rankings, this is what I came up with for the week. Unfortunately, FSU, Florida, for that matter, not anywhere close to being, in here, obviously. Florida parting ways with their head coach there in his 4th year, Billy Napier, on Sunday after their win against Mississippi State. It was a close win. They got the job done there, but not enough to keep their coach as they headed toward the bye week, and they have, a big search ahead of them. And then my Seminoles, well, they went out to Palo Alto there in California, and unfortunately they came up a little bit short. Theoretically, I think controversial call there at Stanford. Quite honestly, it looked like our quarterback that was in there filling in for Tommy Castellanos there, Kevin Sperry. he did a wonderful job there in just a little bit of time on the field. It looked like his shovel pass got in there, but officials, there wasn't an angle really to confirm it that way. It sure looked like that, but that wasn't the call on the field. And FSU now 3-4 and 0-4 in the ACC. I know Mike Norvell, he is, despite what some folks want to say here on Twitter and the like, I think he is really trying hard. And, you got to give him some more time, or not maybe much more time. I put out there Saturday night on Twitter, I thought one more game there and give Kevin Sperry a chance against Wake Forest. And the administration has decided to give him the rest of the year, which I think is a good move. You really, unless you absolutely have to, you don't want to, part ways with the coach during a season here in general. I know in Gainesville, honestly, the talk had been about Billy Napier, having to part ways with him for a year or more. Norvell, it's only been, real conversations being had after the Miami game, and then the talk has really started to get up there. I mean, it'd be good if FSU could just find a way at the end of the year. Maybe Norvell as well, just kind of talk about things, and then maybe Norvell can find a job there. Maybe one of the other openings, Arkansas or Oklahoma State or something like that, closer to Roy Point in college to go. And, kind of be a situation where, after he tried so hard, he, was in a spot here that was very unfair in 2023. He went to university there in Central Arkansas, that school there, Central Arkansas. And it's a situation here where, you feel very bad for Mike Norvell, obviously. He's tried really hard, and you got to be nice to him. You got to give him the benefit of the doubt here, though. I know that is kind of a situation here where time has pretty much, it's down to the last few minutes. If he can just run the table, maybe the rest of the year, maybe FSU can keep him here, and then he turns things around. I mean, he was capable of a undefeated season. He had that in 2023. I mean, incredible there, coaching job there, and great players as well in there with Jordan Travis and the defense. But you got to give Mike Norvell, the benefit of the doubt every step of the way. To be quite honest, in my assessment of things, even though it's not really where you want to be at this point. 6th year, and the new practice facility opening this week. He's tried really hard. You got to feel bad for him. I mean, that was something that nobody deserves. What happened there in the college football playoff? You win every game, a lot of them by a lot of points. I mean, at LSU game, he won by multiple touchdowns against the Heisman Trophy winner, an SEC team that Alabama didn't beat by as much. He beat, teams there. I mean, he didn't play Alabama directly, but, USF's on here now, but USF wasn't good 2 years ago, and Alabama barely beat them. FSU is beating teams by a wide margin there. Norvell, it's something, quite honestly, I don't think anybody, would blame him for not being able to. I mean, they are blaming him on Twitter, obviously, but nobody should be blaming him for. That's just something you can't get past. That shouldn't have happened. It's a disgrace on college football what happened, to be quite honest. It's inexcusable that happened. And the committee, that was just a disgrace what they did there in 2023. They should be ashamed, to be quite honest. I mean, leaving out a perfect season, type of group like that, won the games, in the power conference. I mean, Cincinnati wasn't even in a power conference, and they made the college football playoff there, in the 14 playoff format previous. I know the team, some of them it's little, different years, but it's something where, I mean, I said it then, pretty much, it's something that's going to be, a problem for years and years to come for FSU to really get past what happened on that December 3rd, 2023, because of what, that playoff committee decided. They decided to value, brands over wins. Alabama's brand over wins as you're looking at things. And it's something where, Norvell's messaging back then, it's, pretty much about, if you do everything you can in your power, you're going to be rewarded. Well, FSU did everything. They won every game, and they were not rewarded. They were, punished, to be quite honest. I mean, and it's hard to get past that. It's hard for the players to look at the coach the same way anymore, because you say do everything you can, you're going to get a positive result, and instead they got punished for winning all their games. As you go ahead and look here, though, the Ohio State Buckeyes, they're number 1 in the country on my rankings here. What a great job. The Big Ten champion. They're, in my assessment as of now, if that's how it plays out, in that maybe they play Indiana in the championship and they beat them, then that's, where you would put them. But even now, based on their play, that's how we're sliding things. I know the conference champion designation didn't mean quite as much this year because those last year got the bye, but for a team like USF it does, because you get a slot, but you don't necessarily get the top 4 like it was last year. But Julian's saying he's doing a great job there. He was a previous Alabama recruit there, Nick Saban as coach there. As we're looking at things at Alabama, and then when he retired there, then Ohio State ended up being able to pick him up there, Ryan Dade's squad, and they're the defending champions now. Indiana Hoosiers, what a great job there by Kurt Signetti. He's done incredible work there with the Indiana Hoosiers. I mean, they're a program, that has been, rarely relevant at all in college football. I mean, Lee Corso had them relevant to a degree, but there's only so much you can do back in that time frame. I mean, you didn't have the portal, you didn't have NIL. So, it was all about basketball there and Bob Knight over the years in Indiana, except for a little stretch here or there. Lee Corso had one, but they weren't in the, championship, national title conversation, really. But, as you're looking here, what a great job. I mean, Fernando Mendoza, you see Texas A&M number 3 here, the SEC champion, obviously, based on, right now they're undefeated all the way around, but Alabama's undefeated in the conference. Only lost somehow to FSU this year. And I don't know how, it's something where it's just a surprise. The SEC I don't think is as good as you would think. Alabama, obviously, it was a fluky game, because there's no way, even if this year anyway, 2 years ago is a different story, but this year there's no way Alabama should have really lost the way FSU's playing. But I think FSU's better than people think here this year too, because all their 4 losses. That's the thing about wanting to coach, to lose your job. Some people on Twitter just want that really badly. It's not like, and it might happen next, game, and if it does, and start to become a different storyline. But FSU's been losing all their games close. I think if you're FSU, you rethink things, you go ahead, especially depending on Tommy Castellano's health there, you just go ahead and try to run with the true freshman. He showed some great, play there in a short time in the game. Kevin Sperry, see how things go, and just see if you can try to turn things around, and get, to a bigger bowl game. Maybe not the playoff. That's probably not going to happen now. Very, very unlikely. And, in terms of that now, but just try to get to a bigger bowl game like the Pop-Tarts Bowl, something like that. And that would be, like they did in 22. 22, that'd be a positive step in the right direction there, and hopefully keeping Norvell and that, staff. Hopefully it's about maybe Kevin Sperry. I like how, years ago teams would have it, and I know that's not how it is now generally. It might be with Julian saying at Ohio State, but you run with a younger quarterback and they're playing for multiple years. Tebow at Florida, 3 years plus, he played some in their his freshman year as a backup and played a key role in their championship team, running the ball in there at times with a package. It's important, in general, for the more college environment here, to have a guy that's really dedicated to the school and is there for 3 or 4 years as a guy, or at least 2 years. Jameis, he was at FSU 3 years, 2 years playing, first year as a red shirt. So it's about having a guy that's not just there for 1 year and then leaves to another school. That's just not how it should be. But anyway, BYU there, number 7 in my assessment there. I have them as the Big 12 champion. They beat Utah. That was a great win there. Texas Tech, you shouldn't be penalizing them as much because their quarterback was out in that game, Arizona State. And Arizona State's a very tough team there anyway. Kenny Dillingham's squad, a lot of my rankings have been pretty close to the AP, but not Texas Tech. I have them way higher because I don't think that was a one-play type of loss. And if they were in the SEC, they wouldn't have dropped them as much if they didn't have their quarterback. And you see Miami number 9 here, the ACC number 2. They lost to Louisville there. Louisville's better than people think. They're just outside my rankings here right now for the playoff. Oregon's there, number 10. Big 10, number 3 there. I don't have them as high as some people have them. They did lose against Indiana at home, that game at home in Oregon. It wasn't that close, of a finish there. Quite honestly, Indiana dominated that. And then Oregon almost lost to Penn State, which is now a game. That would have been a bad loss if they had lost there, the way Penn State's been playing lately. Though part of that's probably because of that Oregon game that they lost. Their coach, losing his job there in State College, James Franklin. But Notre Dame there, number 11. I know they've had 2 losses, but the quarterback play is really great. And the 2 losses were to A&M, Texas A&M, and Miami there. Teams that had them in the rankings, they were very close games. 1-2 plays decided them. first 2 games for a new quarterback, and I think Notre Dame's probably going to run the table unless after they beat USC like they did, unless something really changes here. And then if they run the table, they'll be in. USF their coach, I know he's up for some bigger jobs in theory, but they are doing a great job down there in Tampa, the Bulls, and then you have Virginia, the first team out, Louisville, the second team out. You have Ole Miss there, Vanderbilt. As we're tracking, I don't think Vanderbilt should be in there yet. Neither should Ole Miss after that loss. They're in that big game against Georgia. Georgia's a one-loss team, but Ole Miss, I mean, they're a one-loss team, but they struggled against Washington State. I know Virginia did too, but Ole Miss, their Lane Kiffin squad, that was, it looks like it's a situation, I mean, where I don't know, their resume is quite good enough here to be in the playoff right now. I did first have them below Vandy. I moved them ahead of there. They're not that far out, quite honestly. So we'll see how their games go in weeks to come. Vandy, they have another big game this week, so college game day there, obviously. So that's something that we'll be looking at and we'll be tracking here as we're giving you guys the latest here on things. Vanderbilt, they're going to have that game there this week against Missouri, and Eli Drinkowitz. I mean, if Missouri wins that, they can jump up. If Andy wins that, both of those, whoever wins that, will probably be really close in my rankings. AP would probably have them in the playoff, though. And based if you just use those, committee's rankings not quite out yet. They'll be out on Tuesdays here soon, though. Navy is undefeated, so I have them in the conversation. They have a big game against Notre Dame eventually if they, win their conference and, the American Conference. They'd probably be in here. But we shall see, and UNLV that lost to Boise here. Boise State. So Boise State, though, they already have some losses, so it's going to be tough for them to get on in here. But as we go ahead and look at that planning forecast now, very low rain chance today. It's not 0 because of that boundary. We're going to be seeing some cooler temperatures behind that in the morning. Drier air there, too. We have to watch. Just be careful. Drier air can be problematic here at times, as we do have those drier grounds. As you see here by Sunday, as we're looking there, about 80 degrees, 30% chance of rain there. As we're tracking things, you can see on Monday, 50% chance of rain. So that's going on up here as we're looking at the overall picture. You can see 79 degrees for the high there, as we're giving you guys the very latest on all of that. So just a tad cooler. Could have some thunderstorms Monday. We'll see, next week could have some stronger storms at some point in there. It's kind of hard to say. Maybe next Wednesday, too. Another day to watch, but some of the models are showing different things. So, hard to say at this point on that. But, the temperatures here, the mornings will be below average when we're drier, especially Thursday and Friday morning. I know it's about Bradford's game Friday night there at home against Santa Fe. That's a big game there, a senior night for Bradford. Last regular season game for Bradford here, 2025. And the weather should be pretty nice for that as we're looking at things there. Of course, another full update late Thursday as we're watching Melissa there. Tropical storm Melissa in the tropics. So don't lay your guard down on that. I'm not overly concerned about it for the continental U.S. right now. But don't lay your guard down. Now in the Caribbean, there is a lot of concern down there. There's a lot of justifiable concern. I think you can see the H-warp modeling here, in fact. This looks like an update on some of this stuff. And you can see those blue icons indicative of a Cat 4 headed toward Cuba. That really takes it further northwest here. Now, this isn't going any further, so it could still easily, the pattern would suggest it would still curve back to the northeast after that point. But, we'll have to be careful. That's a very slow mover, and that's going to be a flood disaster down there with a lot of people, sadly, injuries and drownings, fatalities there. More than likely, especially those low-lying areas down there in the Caribbean. This name might very well not get used again here in the tropics as we're looking and as we're tracking things here. It may get retired because it's so destructive with its nature down there. Not necessarily for the continental U.S. I do see, as we're looking toward Cuba, you have some areas there. I see Guantanamo Bay there on the map, and you can kind of see here Category 4 not too far away from there according to one forecast model. Not saying it's going to be that yet. The Hurricane Center is a Cat 1 headed toward Jamaica. That's what this is down here. And this is, again, not till like late Sunday. It's down in here right now. A lot of cold cloud tops. And once they wrap around that center and eye pops out, we have problems. Very favorable conditions for strengthening down there. You just, for the continental U.S., especially for like South Florida, you don't want this to form way to the west, because then it could, start to get some different influences here involved. And there have been some very outlying models that take it like towards South Florida or something like that. Not many of them though right now, very few, but it's not a zero chance at this point. But there's more uncertainty than normal things. I mean, the green goes way to the east here. That's one model in there. You see some, the hurricane center goes further west. Some of this kind of eventually goes further west to north. It's kind of all over the place because, there's just so much uncertainty. So just keep checking in. We're gonna do another formal update here late Thursday. So tune in there on that. I don't want to guard down here, and especially in the Caribbean. It's gonna be a problem somewhere down here, more than likely, with a flood disaster. Tragic flood disaster. We can't pinpoint it yet, but probably somewhere in and around East Cuba, Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, and Haiti. Those are the areas at greatest risk here. Puerto Rico needs to watch, but the areas at greatest risk right now: Jamaica, Eastern Cuba, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic. So let's be paying attention down there. I'm going to keep you guys up to date. Let me see if there's any questions or comments here as we're looking and as we're tracking things here. As we're kind of looking at things here in the overall picture on this Tuesday, late Tuesday, early Wednesday. I appreciate everybody's tuning in. If you're watching live, thanks so much for staying up late with me here, folks. It's all about protecting you. It's all about protecting your friends and your family. That's what we're always about here at Clouds Weather. I know. Just again, I appreciate everybody tuning in here. Let me just make sure we don't have any questions. People watching live. I see Marcus there on YouTube watching with some comments there. I know. Just kind of looking here at everything. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Just appreciate everybody watching and trusting me here in the Weather Center. We're just trying to stay on top of everything. Have a great night, everybody. Stay safe. Here's a list of all the platforms I wanted to go off here as we keep watching down toward the Caribbean. We got to be paying attention there. Got to be paying attention there, with our system tropical storm. Melissa, let me take these other models off as I wrap it up so you can just see the official current track from the Hurricane Center. But just know there is a lot of uncertainty, so be paying attention here with this overall situation in mind.